Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. Will she run for re-election? No one is exactly sure, but half of California voters apparently don't want her to. California is often listed as the most progressive state in the country. I think they have a case for that, and they're showing their distaste for Dianne Feinstein in the polling. Half of likely California voters say Senator Dianne Feinstein should not run for re-election, according to a new poll conducted by the Public Policy Institute of California. 46% of California adults and 50% of likely voters say Feinstein should not seek a sixth term, according to the poll. Yet the survey does not test Feinstein against any other potential candidates, and the majority of Democrats, 57%, say Feinstein should run again. So she's above water in the Democratic Party, but still, that's not good. Only 57% of registered Democrats or people who identify as Democrats say she should run again. Though Feinstein's public approval has ticked down slightly from January, it stands at a relatively favorable 48% among California adults and 54% among likely voters. The poll comes as Feinstein sustains increased criticism from her party's left flank, with the possibility of a Democratic challenger in next year's election. Feinstein, a centrist Democrat, has been criticized by progressive activists for her skeptical view of single-payer health care and support for some of President Donald Trump's earliest nominees. She was booed after telling an audience last month that it could be possible for Donald Trump to become a good president. As you know, California voted through a single-payer system, but it was kind of nixed because they said they didn't have the budgetary resources and they didn't know how they were going to pay for it. You figure out how to pay for it once you pass a bill. That's how most bills work. But yes, it's encouraging that California was the first state to at least push it forward. I hope it comes back again. But since the state legislature and the citizenry in California was for single payer, it is really disheartening to know that their senator, one of their senators, is against it. Obviously, Senator Kamala Harris, the freshman senator, their other senator, younger face in California, is a proponent of single payer and was the first announced co-sponsor of Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. So there is a real diametric juxtaposition between Feinstein and Kamala Harris, who, you know, she has her question marks, but has in her record in the Senate so far been fairly progressive. So my thoughts on this are, where is the challenger? She's up for re-election in 2018. Go now. Go now. Start your campaign now. She is so vulnerable. And with enthusiasm in 2018, she could be out. Come on. Justice Democrats, whatever, do it. Go after her. Seriously, right?
Oh, Dianne. I know I'm just a Bernie bro and people are going to call me sexist, but, you know, Dianne Feinstein, I think, is a real symbol of where the Democratic Party has gone wrong over the last 20 to 30 years. First of all, her and John McCain in another life would be in love. Maybe they are in love. And, you know, we wish you well, Mr. McCain. You know, she's never known a war, doesn't love, never pushed a war, never not pushed a war. And, you know, you look at some of her top donors, you know, kind of your typical suspects. Her top donor is PG&E Corporation. If you're in California, that's the Pacific Gas
And electric.
Yeah, it's the biggest monopoly in California in terms of electricity and gas. She has gotten a whopping $191,450. So that's a lot of money for a senator. That's almost $200,000 just from then. You got Time Warner, owner of CNN. Wonder why they did a very, very lovely, Dana Bash did a very, very lovely interview or special, I think it was, on Dianne Feinstein. $142,000. Wells Fargo, $118,000. Emily's List, $100,000. Bank of America, almost $100,000. And General Dynamics, another goodie, $92,000. Also, in addition to just being your typical Wall Streeter, you know, neocon, all these things, she's out of touch. And it's not only because of her age. Like Mitch McConnell, I think her net worth is upwards of $15 million. Her husband, there's been some ethical issues with her husband and possibly her helping to push through business that might have helped him. That happened a few years ago at a town hall. I think Emma might have mentioned it, but she basically, like Nancy Pelosi, well, Medicare for all, we're just not ready for that, this and that. Well, it's because of people like Dianne Feinstein, who takes a hell of a lot of money from the insurance industry, Nancy Pelosi takes a hell of a lot of money from the insurance industry, that we don't get Medicare for all in the most progressive, democratically run state in the country. So Dianne Feinstein, I think she does need to go. And there does seem, there's not a declared candidate yet, but apparently there's an organization that just formed essentially to challenge her. Bay Area progressives announced Sunday afternoon they formed an organization to primary Feinstein from the left, calling themselves Trump-Free California. The group called upon California State Senate President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon to challenge Feinstein in the 28 election and launched the website kevinspeaksforme.com. We should say Feinstein has not formally announced that she's rerunning.
Yes, and you know, she is, I believe, 82 years old.
You said it, not me.
No, I'm not ageist at all. I just mean she may want to retire. I actually saw an interesting op-ed from a local California paper that said ageism was the reason that progressives are against Dianne Feinstein. I gotta say, it's really ageist of those progressives to be supportive of Senator Bernie Sanders. You know, it's just like they just hate old people. That's what it is. They want young people who are smoking the reefer and listening to the Fetty Wap and all of that kind of stuff. So Senator Dianne Feinstein, Jordan listed the top companies that have donated to her, the top industries in her career, which spans from 1991 to currently. Lawyers and law firms, you see that often with corporatist Democrats. Top donor, $3.7 million. Retirees, that's a good industry for Democrats to be getting donors from. Bernie, I believe, gets a lot from them. $2 million. Real estate, not as great. Again, we talked about Steve Mnuchin having his hand in California real estate. I don't know if he's part of those donors, but $1.8 million. Securities and investment, 1.7, almost 1.7 million. TV, movies, and music, 1.6. That makes a lot of sense. She's from California. Health professionals, dicey. It's very vague. Again, these campaign finance laws don't allow for enough disclosure. So health professionals could be people advocating for universal health care, donating to her. I mean, Bernie has received, I think, around $2 million from health professionals in his career, but kind of doubt that the $1.1 million that she's received from health professionals are advocating for those principles. Everything else falls below the $1 million mark, but that's a lot of money, and it makes sense. Look, that's a very typical donor base for a kind of corporatist Democrat. I am surprised that in the top amount of donors it isn't any defense contractors, because she has been very pro-war in her career. Her husband's real estate firm is poised to make $1 billion selling post offices. So California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein is back in the news as a giant real estate investment firm run by her husband, Rich Bloom, is potentially poised to earn as much as $1 billion in commissions from selling U.S. Postal Services buildings across the country. Several years ago, Feinstein said that she exerted no influence in the process that led to Bloom's company, CBRE Group, then the world's largest commercial real estate services firm, obtaining an exclusive contract to market USPS facilities as part of a larger federal effort to reduce the deficit. The USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, is a federal agency. Dianne Feinstein is a senator in the federal government. So I don't know how that's not a conflict of interest. And $1 billion, again, is a lot of money. There's a push to privatize the Postal Service. It's not talked about a lot, but I don't really know her position on it. It wouldn't surprise me if she was a part of that because, again, her husband is trying to buy up these Postal Service buildings. Feinstein dismissed the conflict of interest allegations at the time, which were followed by numerous investigative reports criticizing the deal. The USPS Inspector General issued a report saying the contract was not how it previously sold properties and was unlikely to reduce USPS costs. California-based investigative reporters found that CPRE was selling properties below market value to clients, properties, which means the buyers could likely profit if they resold to them. So it looks shady. It's designed to increase the profits of her husband and her subsequently. Just another reason why Dianne Feinstein should be out, and something that CNN is not going to report on, MSNBC is not going to report on, but they're going to show her in an aggrandizing light when she hammers people in the Russia investigations.
Lastly, I will say this. At a certain point, forget Dianne Feinstein, but like, that's why we need term limits. At a certain point, you're in the club for too long, okay? After a while, she's 84. I'm not trying to be an ageist, but like, it's time, besides the fact that she's corrupt and bought off, it's time to pass the baton, Dianne. It's like, go retire. Same thing with Hillary. I mean, when you're in Washington for that long, you are disconnected. She is very disconnected from the average working class person in California. Just because it's an overly democratic and progressive state, California has some of the highest taxes in the country, and California is the biggest state. Is it Texas or California? I think California. So, it's bigger than many countries. So when you have people like Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi in office for too long, you kind of get what you get, which is a very disconnected from reality point of view. And by the way, it wasn't reported on CNN or anything, but Medicare for All not passing in California, that doesn't happen without Nancy Pelosi's input. That doesn't happen without Dianne Feinstein's input. If they wanted it, and there was will, and they thought, that's what they wanted for their state, Nancy Pelosi said, it's not right on the federal level yet, but let's use the states as a laboratory, I think was her words. Well, California, it was ready to go, and passed the Senate, and the House stopped it. So I would love to see her primary. It might not even matter if she decides not to run, but my hunch is she will run.